What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of the Young Guns podcast. And today we're going to be talking about the Ottawa Senators and the big changes that have happened to the Ottawa Senators over the last 24 hours. There's been a lot to unpack. The Ottawa Senators, first and foremost, there was a statement released yesterday that the Senators were going to be forfeiting a first round draft pick in either 2024, 2025, or 2026 for their involvement in the Evgeny Dadonov trade that took place in July of 2021, where they sent Evgeny Dadonov to the Vegas Golden Knights in exchange for Nick Holden and a third round pick. And then after that, Vegas ended up trading Dadonov, or tried to trade Dadonov, to the Anaheim Ducks in March of 2022, around near the trade deadline, in which it was invalidated due to the fact that Evgeny Dadonov did not agree to a move with the Anaheim Ducks, and Vegas were not made aware of the trade protection that Dadonov had. Zach is going to explain a little bit more soon. And then what else happened, and leading up to the fact that they announced this situation, Pierre Dorion, who is the former GM of the Ottawa Senators, now was officially fired. He was let go. According to Michael Andlauer, he actually resigned and wasn't officially let go. But in this case, the Senators do part ways with him, and they appoint Steve Staios, who is president of hockey operation, as the interim GM for the time being, as they continue their search. Obviously, with Ottawa, there's been a lot of problems over the last couple of months. Obviously with this Dadonov thing, the fact that the Josh Norris situation as well, with the fact that they were unsure whether he was going to start the season, and managing that injury, and then obviously Shane Pinto, who had a 41-game suspension given to him for sport betting related activities. Now, we don't know the exact thing that he did, but he was suspended for 41 games, which in theory cost the Ottawa Senators a very good player for that time. He was not signed during that time either. So that played a role in Pierre Dorion's firing. But like I said, we're going to get into all the details soon. So Zach, just give me, first of all, your thoughts on this Evgeny Dadonov situation, and what happened, what went wrong here, and do you think that the penalty was harsh on the Ottawa Senators? And just give me your thoughts on it.
So first and foremost, the situation here is that in July of 2021, the Senators trade Evgeny Dadonov to the Vegas Golden Knights. And, I kind of can just paint a picture. Pierre Dorion on the phone with general manager of the Vegas Golden Knights. The GM of Vegas asked, does he have a no-trade list? And Pierre Dorion says no. But the player, in fact, did have a 10-team no-trade list that Pierre Dorion, in fact, and the Sens management, I don't know who is in charge of that situation, but, Pierre Dorion is going to be the one liable. He did not disclose of a 10-team list. The 10-team list existed. So he gets traded to Vegas. And then at that next trade deadline, the player gets traded to, and they attempt to trade him to Anaheim. And the trade can't fall through because Dadonov's camp are saying, Anaheim is a part of our no trade destination, and Vegas, not being aware of this, can't fall through on this deal. So obviously, like Mike Andlauer said in his press conference yesterday, it pissed off both organizations, the Anaheim Ducks and the Vegas Golden Knights, due to this non-disclosure by the Sens. And this has been a case that has been investigated from the league for some time now, and it was just announced yesterday, like you said, the Sens having to give away a first-round pick of their choice in either years 2024, 2025, or 2026. And yes, and with all these facts considered, it is the Sens deserve to be penalized, but for a first-round pick, I think it's absolutely horseshit. I'm very aware of the situation and the mistakes that the Sens made in this case, but a first round pick is very harsh, considering organizations like Chicago had sexual assault under wraps and basically didn't get got a $2 million fine, but no penalty for their on ice product, being like losing a draft pick or etc. And then they win the draft lottery and draft Connor Bedard. So I look at that as a comparison. I'm not saying that the Sens shouldn't have been penalized, because they absolutely had to have been penalized. But I'm saying that there's a clear double standard in the league. Maybe it's because an organization like Chicago generates a lot more revenue, is just better. Original Six team is just a better business for the league. So as a Sens fan, it's very frustrating. I don't think an appeal for this situation is out of the works. I think Michael Andlauer expressed a lot of frustration yesterday, as we heard in the press conference, and I think he's gonna do something about it, because there's this case here, and there's this Shane Pinto situation, which we'll talk more in depth about after, which weren't disclosed to him in his camp when they bought the team in the summer. And they were the last ones that left on the table with a big time offer that was lucrative enough for the Melnyk family and the negotiating for the organization. And they're spending almost $1 billion on a franchise and have no idea that these two situations are under investigation. And that is just, it's foul by the league. It's foul by Gary Bettman. And once again, Andlauer expressed his frustration during the press conference yesterday. And as a fan, I'm very happy that he was that candid. And I think it's going to set a standard now for the league. At least it's going to insinuate a bit of a change, because now when another organization will be up for sale, then these things are going to be treated differently by way of how they've set the precedent with the Sens. So yeah, I'm frustrated about that. Pierre Dorion gets fired. It's definitely merited. He was a tenured GM since the 2016 season. Obviously, he had a lot of great moves, a lot of not so great moves, but a lot of Sens fans like myself have felt like his time was coming, and then this is just the fireable offense, and this is just the inevitable after this situation. Then there was no way he wasn't gonna get fired, and that is exactly what happened. Either he got relieved from his duties, or he quit because he was about to be fired. At the end of the day, he wasn't going to stay, and now we're in the predicament we're in with the Steve Staios, who had some success in Hamilton with Michael Andlauer in the past, is going to be filling in as interim GM. He's the current and new president of hockey operations, just announced maybe a month ago for the Sens, and he's the interim, but they'll be looking for a full-time replacement soon.
Yeah. So obviously, first things first, I mean, I'm going to just give my opinion on this verdict. And to be honest with you, like I agree with you. I think that as much as the Ottawa Senators deserve to be punished, and look, what they did was not right, because at the end of the day, you pissed off the Vegas Golden Knights, you pissed off the Anaheim Ducks, like you said. Vegas at the time was trying to trade Dadonov to make a subsequent move that would have helped them potentially make the playoffs during that time. Now, obviously, within those 2 years, Vegas ended up winning a Stanley Cup. So for them, it's not a big deal at the end of the day, because they still ended up winning a Stanley Cup within the next 2 years of this punishment coming into fruition. But I do agree that, if you look at other situations that have happened around the league, especially with Arizona and the combine situation that happened, and then also with the Vegas Golden Knights and the Ottawa Senators and the Dadonov deal, and also the Chicago Blackhawks and Kyle Beach, there definitely seems to be a little bit of confusion as to what the league tolerates and what they don't. Because for Kyle Beach, the payment was like $2 million, which I don't even think is enough, right? And I think that Chicago got away with something that was far worse than anything the Ottawa Senators or the Arizona Coyotes, for that matter, would have done at that time. And so I think that, yes, it's warranted a punishment, like you said. I don't think a first-round pick is harsh, because Arizona did something similar for a draft combine, and they were fined a first-round pick. What we're essentially trying to say in this situation is that Ottawa got fined a first-round pick, but Chicago should have had a bigger punishment given to them for the Kyle Beach situation that happened in regards to that. And like you said, right, they covered up a very sensitive topic in sexual assault. And they were granted Connor Bedard in the process, which is a franchise and generational talent. Meanwhile, the Ottawa Senators are now going to have to play a game of which draft pick do we want to keep over the next 3 seasons, which could affect their future plans and will affect their future plans because they won't have a first round pick to either trade to help them either compete for playoffs or compete for the cup, or if they're in a tough position to even draft a promising forward or defenseman at that spot that they would be at. So definitely, definitely an interesting situation by the league. One that I think the league got right in terms of the punishment that Ottawa got, but in terms of the way they've handled not only this situation, but just these types of cases in general, I think they've been very, very inconsistent. And I also think that for that reason, and just the fact that, like you mentioned before, Andlauer buys the team and there's no transparency on what's going on with Shane Pinto being investigated and also the Dadonov situation. Like, I think the NHL did a lot of sneaky stuff around here that
why wait? Why not disclose this to the interested party, and then they learn about this as the general public learns about it, and the penalty is a first round pick. I don't know what justifies the first round pick, because the player in this instance is Evgeny Dadonov. And at that time, it's hard to put a price tag on these kind of situations, but considering the player, the circumstance of the trade, I don't get. I'm interested to know what the league's justification for the first round pick is. I don't get it, to be honest. And then you look back at a situation like Chicago's, which it was a known thing even before it was made public, obviously. But then Coach ex Stanley Cup winning coach Joe Quenneville gets another job, gets hired in Florida, and only is forced to resign when this news comes out. So there's a lot of I feel like there's a lot of shady business that's going on. And going back to the Pinto situation, which is another thing not disclosed to Andlauer's group, is that we don't know what he did. So it's hard for Luca and I here to react and say, he didn't merit the 41 game suspension, which is a plea on his part, because originally it was, as you know, it was supposed to be 3 years, and because of good behavior, cooperation, accountability, and things like that, they were able to shrink it down to 41 games. But there's still a lot of questions there, right? Because he's a young player. He was 21 years old last year. He got hurt, and he's sitting at home. He doesn't know what to do. The league constantly promotes betting. It's through a bunch of sponsorship arrangements. Mike Andlauer talked about it yesterday, how guys like Pinto saw Wayne Gretzky for MGM basically promoting betting, and they expect these young players who have all this money to not indulge in these kind of things. But until we learn about what he did that breached the NHL's policy, we know you can't bet on hockey, but you could bet on other sports. That's kind of like the general thing, right? With the NHL's betting policy for its players. So there's a lot to break down, but that situation is still very confusing to me too.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, I look at this situation. It's a mess. It's a total mess, and I think that the NHL really didn't handle. Not only that, first of all, I don't think they handled the sale of the Ottawa Senators right, with everything going on, and like Andlauer says, right, like he says that the NHL did not advise him of either investigation, Bosch, the Dadonov no trade clause, or Pinto sports betting incident before he closed on purchase. He's like, maybe they didn't want a disruption to make sure that the seller got the best price possible, right? And he's right.
That's justifiable, right?
That's it.
From his end, it's definitely justifiable.
That's it. And then he goes on to say, why I inherited this is beyond me, says of the NHL punishment and forfeiture of the first round pick, because it took them 2 years to come up with a verdict on this situation, which he's right. Like, no matter how you look at this and no matter, what the situation is, the fact that the NHL took 2 years to make a decision on this Evgeny Dadonov situation is absolutely ridiculous, because this shouldn't have taken 2 years. It shouldn't have. It doesn't matter what the consequence is. The fact that this took 2 years, and in the midst of the fact that this isn't even Michael Andlauer's fault because he wasn't in ownership when this happened, like,
Yeah.
to pay a consequence for something that he had no control over. Now, mind you, yes, Pierre Dorian had control over it. It was him that did it, and he got his actions got paid consequences for it. But Andlauer shouldn't be the one. He should have at least been disclosed of this if that's what's going to happen when buying a team, because it's like buying a house, right? It's like you buy a house, and the first thing you do when you buy a house is you ask, like, what's wrong with the house? Well, the NHL basically just didn't tell them what was wrong with the house. And the problem is, in this situation, is that it becomes a financial issue and it becomes a foundation issue, because now, he's got grounds to be like, well, dude, you didn't tell me all this stuff before I bought it. Like, what, you hid all of this from me, and now all of a sudden you're throwing all this shit at me. So, and I don't know when they started the Pinto investigation, but like you said, nobody's gotten an explanation as to what happened there. Like,
Yeah.
we know he got suspended. We know it's 41 games. We know that he didn't bet on hockey. So what was the problem there? Like, what warranted 41 game suspension for him? Because in the end, the NHL is making all these decisions, but they're not giving any answers. So it's as if they're like, yeah, this is what it is, and it's done. And it's like, but guys, like, we need to know. And even like the Dadonov situation, like, nobody's clueless. Everybody knows what happened. Like, everybody knows what happened. We all lived in the moment when it did. We just want clarification to be like, okay, why did you make that decision that it was a first round pick, right?
Yeah.
We could all guess what it was, but either way, whether it was Ottawa's incompetence or whether it was a pure accident, at the end of the day, just say what it was, because or else you're punishing a team without necessarily giving a full-on explanation as to why. So that's where I think I'm very upset about in terms of the NHL. And I understand Michael Andlauer's frustration. I mean, I watched the press conference yesterday. He wasn't very happy. And I don't blame him. I don't blame him one bit, because at the end of the day, he's now in this position where, he comes in, he gets this team, and he's got all these problems to deal with that he wasn't aware of, right? And yeah, he made the first move to be like, I'm going to fire Pierre Dorian. And rightfully so, Pierre Dorian deserved to be fired. Whether Sens fans agree with us or not on that, he deserved to be fired. But
he didn't do his job properly, and it
cost him the job. But at the end of the day, the NHL didn't do their job either, right? So that's where the frustration lies. And that's where I'm looking at this going, you know what? Like, there's a lot more to this, and I think the NHL should answer for a lot more of this, because this doesn't make any sense. And in the end, like, look, Ottawa's going to pay the price, and like you said, Andlauer's not going to appeal it because there's no point. But it's not a very good start to the year for the Ottawa Senators, and I don't think that this is how Michael Andlauer wanted his.
I think he has. I think he has grounds to not to cut you off, but I think he has grounds to appeal because of the league. I touched on it a little bit earlier, but for the next teams that are going to be up for sale, and for potential buyers, they're going to look at a situation like Ottawa, where the league hit all of this shit from Andlauer's group, and they're going to think, we don't want a situation like that to happen. And so by Andlauer speaking so publicly about it, it's gonna make the league backtrack here. And I think that could be grounds for him to appeal. I don't know if the Pinto situation and the Dadonov situation, if he's gonna do it for both, or I'm not sure how he's gonna go about it. But I think for at least the severity of the issues, they're gonna have to be reconsidered here, because of him not knowing about any of this until probably just recently. So they're gonna have so I think the league, to kind of backtrack and reset their image here, they're gonna have to do something that is favorable to Ottawa. And so it's, Sens fans are very excited after that press conference, after this week of just chaos and this all of these situations, this soap opera that is the Ottawa Senators, that have like this for the past 5 years. You could say, you know what, this owner is in our corner, and and he's going to do everything he can to make this organization prosper. That's what it says to me. So I'm very happy by the way he dealt with that press conference yesterday.
Yeah, and I wanna move on to the firing of Pierre Dorian, which played a role in this situation regarding the Dadonov thing, but also his other subsequent moves that he's made throughout the year. And I want to talk a little bit about Pierre Dorian's tenure because it's been a very interesting tenure for him since he came in. You know, he took over um, for Brian Murray, who stepped
Remember,
down due to cancer issues and then later passed away. And you know, he had a very interesting tenure with the Ottawa Senators. You know, he traded. You know, he had a very good team that went to the conference final. He put himself in a position where I thought he built a good team. I thought he had moments where he could have traded better. I think he probably shouldn't have done the Matt Duchene trade when he did, which costed the Ottawa Senators Bo and Byram at the time. But you know, he got a good return for Eric Carlson. That was the best trade he made. Um, you know, ended up getting Tim Stutzla and I believe Jake Sanderson with the 2 first-round picks that he ended up getting. So
no,
that and Josh Norris.
it was the other one was the Josh Norris who had already been drafted, but still, that is just an
That's it. So
incredible work by him there.
that's it. And then you also look at the fact that the Mark Stone deal that he made wasn't the best deal. You know, they got Brandstrom, who never panned out into the defenseman that he wanted to become, or that the Senators expected him to become. And you know, he made promises to the team about them making the playoffs. I think last year he expected them to make the playoffs, and he didn't. You know, the Shane Pinto situation before the fact that he got suspended, where he wasn't able to re-sign him because he had made some signings that were a little bit controversial, the Travis Hamonic signing to be exact, or giving Matthew Joseph $2.75 million for 3 years. So there's been a lot of good with Dorian, but just as much as there's a lot of good, there's also been a lot of very average to mediocre. And I think honestly, at the end of the day, his time was up, and I think people knew that as you know, as this new ownership brought in, that if Dorian wasn't going to get this team to the next level, his job was done. And then, you know, it wasn't even because of Ottawa's performances that he got fired. It was because of the fact that it was the Dadonov thing that threw it over the line. But Ottawa hasn't had a great start to the year. And I think that a lot of that plays on the factor that, you know, maybe the guys that Dorian brought in weren't the best. I know they've dealt with some injuries and now they don't have Shabbat or Chikrin for a little while, which is going to hurt them. But at the end of the day, I think he's put himself in a very tough position. And I don't always think he's made the best moves for this team. And ultimately, I think his time was just up. I think that it's at a point now where, you know, he had to just go and Ottawa has to go in a different direction.
Yeah, well, the way I see it with Pierre Dorion is you can't use the good to just wipe away all the bad that happened. One of his first moves as a GM was trading away Mika Zibanejad, who could have been a cornerstone center for this organization, for Derek Brassard, in an attempt to become a competitive team when they weren't even a Stanley Cup contender at the time. I know they had that playoff run where Eric Carlson put the team on his back. They had good players like Mark Stone, Mike Hoffman at the time, but you know the year after, with no Eric Carlson for a bit, and he came back and he wasn't really the same. That team fell off, and he tried to get aggressive. He made the Matt Duchene deal. Matt Duchene played great while he was here, but it didn't work out. Everything around them was fading away. They had to trade Mark Stone. That for Eric Brandstrom, there was a lot of excitement that he built up for Eric Brandstrom. That didn't work out. And I think his best moves were getting the young core, which were drafted under his tenure, and they've been hit. They hit on a lot of first round picks, high picks in the 2020 draft. You know, Ridley, Gregg, Jake Sanderson, Tim Stutzla, that draft alone. Brady Tkachuk at 4 overall. Like his department, he has a background in scouting, and the Sens amateur scouting department, they did a fantastic job at drafting. And him helping the young core believe in the future of this team. First with Thomas Chabot and Brady Tkachuk. Those are great extensions for the team. Jake Sanderson locked up Josh Norris, Tim Stützle. He locked up the guys that he drafted. And that is, that's why we wow Pierre Dorion, the fact that he was able to recruit also Claude Giroux now, Vladimir Tarasenko. But then there's all that other stuff. And the mismanagement of the cap now with, like you mentioned, Matthew Joseph, they signed Zach McEwen and Travis Hamonic in a situation where they had to fit Shane Pinto under the cap, but obviously there was the gambling situation that was under wraps. But his time was coming, and I think it's just better for the organization now that he's gone. But this will always be the core he built, and it's a great foundation set for the subsequent general manager that will take over on a full-time basis.
Yeah. And let's talk a little bit about that. So obviously Dorian gets fired. Steve Staios, who was appointed president of hockey operations, is now going to take over for the time being as interim GM. And there's been a few names that have been linked with the Senators GM job. Some names not the best, others not bad. But Dave Pagnotta tweeted that they were hearing that Peter Chiarelli is a name that's been making the rounds as a possible GM replacement in Ottawa. We've also heard about Matthew Darche. And then also, I believe Jason Spezza was another one that I heard of. There's also AGM Ryan Bonus, who's Rick Bonus's son. He's also another candidate that apparently has been talked about that could potentially take over the GM job, simply for the fact that he's got the familiarity of the fact that he and Dorian built the team together. So he's already got a familiarity with the core. But for me, first of all, if Peter Chiarelli becomes the GM of the Ottawa Senators, that's going to be one of the funniest things in the league. Like, I'm going to die of laughter if that happens, because I just don't think that should happen. But I think Matthew Darche is an interesting one. He's done a very good job in Tampa. Montreal was interested in him. Andlauer knows him because of the fact that Montreal interviewed him. And when Montreal interviewed him, he was actually present for that interview and really, really liked Matthew Darche as an interview. So I know that Andlauer likes Matthew Darche. But Steve Staios is a hockey guy. He's been with Andlauer for a long time. And so I think that Ottawa is going to try to get a GM that I think is going to try to work with Steve Staios, but also has his own ideas. So any of those guys, apart from Chiarelli, I think is a good option for Ottawa. But, at the end of the day, this is a team that's young. They have a lot of really good players. They're a solid core. I think that this is a team that needs to take the next step and make the playoffs. And I think it starts this season. And if it doesn't happen this season, and I know they voiced their confidence in DJ Smith, I think if Ottawa doesn't make the playoffs this year, regardless of the injuries and everything that's gone on, I think DJ Smith's time in Ottawa might come to an end come the end of the season. That's just my opinion. I don't know if the new GM is going to make that decision or if it's going to be Steve Staios, but I think for Ottawa, it's a big year for them. And I think they know now, with everything that's gone on, they can finally just focus on playing hockey, and they need to find a way to turn things around quickly for them, or else it's going to be another long season for them. And Sens fans don't want it, and they're better than what they've shown on the ice, in my opinion. So
and I think DJ Smith is somehow the one who hasn't been pointed the finger at because of all this chaos regarding the team. But he's been the coach for 5 years. They've had terrible starts in all of the 5 years. Right now, they're as it stands, they're 4-4. Never made the playoffs. Never even got close to really competing for a wild card spot. You could say last season, but they were at best 4 points out. They were never in a playoff position at any point last season. And they get off to another slow start this year where, if you listen to him in training camp, he was talking about how he was going to be so proactive and that this team was going to have a great start. He's going to have his line combinations right away. The team was going to, be very attention to detail from the beginning, from the get-go. And that didn't happen. You look at I watch the Sens, I watch pretty much every game, and it's a lot of 5-on-5 D-zone breakdowns. There's a lack of coverage, and that's lack of schematics, and in a lot of other areas. And that comes down to coaching. They have the roster to get the job done, but they don't have the direction. I've been fed up for DJ Smith for the past year and a half now. I think he should have gotten fired 2 years ago. But somehow, Pierre Dorion never pulled that trigger. He was the guy that Pierre Dorion brought in. And now with, I know Steve Stales in the press conference yesterday said that he's faithful in the coaching staff. I think that is just a PR stunt for the moment, because there's a lot of turmoil already with the team, and you don't want to keep walking on eggshells for the time being. But I think his job is definitely on the line. I think if this team is not a couple of games above 500 by the end of November, I think DJ Smith is 100% out of there, and that's what the fans want. And a lot of fans like myself just want him to get out of there as soon as possible, so the team could really start playing for an experienced coach and show what they're really capable of. Because if you look at the roster from top to bottom, there's no excuse for them starting this slow once again. There's no excuse for them not making the playoffs this year.
No, for sure. And that's the biggest thing, is that this is a team that, look, they're 500 hockey right now. It's not, we're making it seem like it's horrible, but it really isn't. But it's just one of those things where, with all the injuries that they have, and with everything that's going on, it's going to probably get worse before it gets better, because they're not going to have Chikrin. They're not going to have Shabbat.
Chikrin is not. It's Artem Zub and
Artem Zub, and
who should be back very soon, and Shabbat 4 to 6 weeks.
That's it, which is a big loss. Which is a big loss for them, right? But look, Korpisalo, I think, has had a couple of good games. I think Forsberg is, he's gonna bounce back. I think their forward core is really good. Their D core, I mean, look, it's a young team, but Sanderson's really played well to start the year. Chikrin's been fantastic. Zub's a big loss, but he should be back soon. And then you have Hamonic and Brandstrom, who are meh. And then you have some young guys like Bernard Docker, Tyler Clevin, and also Nicholas Matinpalo, who are all there to kind of fill the void for the time being. Look, I completely agree with you. I think if DJ Smith is not able to get this team going come November, or even early December, late December, I think this is a team that might have to make a coaching change mid-season and bring in a guy like, I think a guy like Claude Julien, or even a guy like Gerard Gallant, make a lot of sense for the Senators.
Yeah, I think so too.
Because those are the types of coaches I think Ottawa needs. And the best thing about both those coaches is that they're experienced, right? They've both made to Stanley Cup Finals. Julien has won one with Boston in 2011. I know he hasn't won one since, but he's still got that experience. And then also Gerard Gallant made himself a Stanley Cup finalist, has had playoff teams, has brought in teams to playoffs as well in every single team he's coached. So I think that there's definitely an opportunity for Ottawa to look at that option as well. But in my opinion, I think Dorian's going to get a job somewhere else. I don't think he's done in the NHL. I think he's definitely going to get a job. I don't know if it's going to be as a GM. I think it might be as a scout or as an AGM. But I don't think he's done as in the NHL. I don't think teams. Yes, what he did, he screwed up. He did. But in terms of the moves that he made for Ottawa, like I said, it wasn't all bad. He made a lot of very good moves, and he made a lot of very moves that weren't the best. So I don't know what Dorian's future lies in the NHL. What I do know is that if the Senators bring in Peter Chiarelli or Marc Bergevin, which was funny because our other co-host Chris was talking about that if the Senators bring in Marc Bergevin, if they bring in Marc Bergevin or Peter Chiarelli, it's going to be a long season for the Senators and a long tenure for the Senators if that happens. But I think Ottawa's going to be fine. I would not be surprised if they start going on a winning streak now over the next couple of weeks and get themselves back in the playoff hunt, because that's where they're supposed to be. And that's where the expectation is for them. So that's just my opinion. I don't really have anything else to add. I don't know if you have anything else you'd want to add, but yeah.
Yeah. Out of the GM candidates, obviously Peter Chiarelli is not ideal. He's had a catastrophic reign in Edmonton. I like Mathieu Darche a lot. He's been the president of hockey operations for Tampa. He's had a lot of oversight on that organization. He has a history with Andlauer, like you said. I think he's going to bring some new ideas. And and for the head coach, just somebody with experience and somebody who's been around the league and proved that they could win. Because if you look at now with DJ Smith, if DJ Smith gets fired, you'd count 8 head coaches for the Sens who the last 8 who would have been fired never been rehired by another organization as a head coach ever again. And the last former Sens coach to be rehired by another team was Jacques Martin, and he left after the 04 season, I believe. So you're looking at guys like Corey Clouston, Paul McLean, Guy Boucher have never been rehired. Damn. And that just shows that the organization hasn't really got it right with head coaches. So I think they need to stabilize that area and get somebody who's experienced. So that's all I have to say.
I agree.
But this team I think I'm faithful. This team is gonna get on a run here, and by December they'll be in the playoff race, or even in no time. I'm very confident that this team is gonna crack the playoffs this year.
They'll be fighting with the Habs for that final wild card spot. I'm joking, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. I mean, the Habs are playing well.
Maybe for the next month, and then the Habs will probably fall back to reality.
Yeah, that's probably what's gonna happen. But anyways, guys, thank you guys for watching this video. If you guys in the comments below, if you're a Sens fan, give us your thoughts. Obviously, Zach gave us a very good in-depth analysis of what he thought. But we would like to know your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe to this video, and stay tuned for the next episode of the Young Guns podcast. Thank you very much for watching.
Peace.